The room was quiet in the way that only late evenings can be, when the world seems to pause and every sound feels more important than it really is. The lights were low, soft enough to blur the edges of everything, and in that gentle half-shadow she felt both nervous and strangely calm. It was her first time standing at the edge of something unknown, a moment she had imagined in fragments but never fully understood. Her heart beat louder than the ticking clock, and every breath felt deliberate, as if her body was asking permission to move forward. He stood close, not rushing, not reaching, simply present. There was something reassuring in that stillness, in the way he waited as if time itself belonged to her. She had always believed love announced itself with fireworks and dramatic gestures, but here it arrived quietly, in the space between two people who were trying to be brave. When he leaned closer, his voice was barely more than a breath against her ear, and "I promise to be gentle." Those words carried a weight she hadn't expected. They weren't about strength or control. They were about care, about listening, about respect. She had grown up hearing stories that made love sound complicated or frightening, something to be endured or proven rather than felt. Friends spoke in nervous laughter and half-truths, movies exaggerated everything, and advice came wrapped in warnings. Yet, in that moment, none of those voices mattered. What mattered was the sincerity in his tone and the patience in his hands. She realized that gentleness was not weakness. It was a choice, and a powerful one. As they sat together, she noticed how her fear softened into curiosity. The idea of love stopped being a distant concept and became something real, something close enough to touch. She felt seen, not as an idea or an expectation, but as herself, with all her hesitations and hopes. He asked her if she was comfortable, if she wanted to continue, and each question felt like a small gift. She understood then that true intimacy wasn't about crossing a line, it was about agreeing to step forward together. Her thoughts wandered to all the versions of herself that had led to this moment. The girl who believed love was something you earned, the woman who feared vulnerability, the dreamer who still hoped for tenderness. They all seemed to gather inside her, watching quietly as she made a choice. She nodded, not because she felt pressured, but because she felt ready. That readiness wasn't loud or dramatic, it was steady, like a calm tide. When his hand met hers, the sensation was simple but meaningful. It wasn't fireworks, but it was warmth, a reassurance that she wasn't alone. She became aware of the rhythm they shared, the way their movements mirrored each other without effort. Each small gesture felt intentional, as if they were learning a new language together, one built on trust rather than urgency. She discovered that pleasure wasn't just a physical feeling, it was emotional, rooted in safety and connection. It came from knowing she could speak, pause, or laugh without breaking the moment. It came from being allowed to be imperfect. In that space, she didn't have to perform or pretend. She could simply exist, and that realization was freeing. Time seemed to stretch, not because anything extraordinary was happening, but because she was fully present. She noticed the softness of his voice when he asked how she felt, the way he watched her reactions instead of assuming them. Each response guided him, and each adjustment showed her that her comfort mattered. This wasn't a story of conquest or expectation, it was a shared experience unfolding naturally. As the evening continued, she felt layers of tension slip away. The nervousness that once sat heavy in her chest transformed into a quiet confidence. She realized she was learning about herself as much as she was learning about him. What she liked, what she needed, what made her feel safe. These discoveries felt empowering, not overwhelming. She remembered thinking that love would change her in some dramatic way, that she would wake up as someone entirely new. Instead, it felt like coming home to herself. The pleasure she discovered was gentle, yes, but also profound. It wasn't about intensity, it was about presence. It was about feeling valued in a way that reached beyond the moment. There were pauses filled with soft conversation and comfortable silence. They talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. She had her own nervous jokes, and he smiled in a way that made her feel understood. These small exchanges became just as meaningful as any touch, reminding her that intimacy is built from many threads woven together. In those moments, she understood that love doesn't demand perfection. It asks for honesty. It invites you to show up as you are and to accept the same from someone else. The promise to be gentle extended beyond physical closes.